Hey, I'm Aaron from GameEnthus.com, and in this video I'm going to be talking about We're Sinking, a pirate's dilemma. Forgive me, there is an exclamation point. We're Sinking, a pirate's dilemma. We're Sinking, a pirate's dilemma is being published by Ludamus Games and was designed by Joseph Frederick with illustrations by Roman Novikov. We're Sinking, a pirate's dilemma utilizes mechanics like hand management, some bluffing, some betting, and most importantly, and most popularly, cooperation. Whoa, okay. But just let me mention, it's good and it works.
There can be only one.
All right. In the game, players are going to be taking on the role of one of 6 pirates on one ship, a ship that is currently being attacked by monsters. Well, a monster, one at a time. And players have to make decisions about how they might go about doing this. They can either help to destroy the monster and hope that they have more treasure than their crewmates to win, or they can allow the ship to sink and then hopefully have the fewest number of cards in their hand, thus winning the game. I'll be very much remiss if I did not highlight this wonderful 3D model ship that does come apart into several pieces. It's very nice. We're Sinking, a Pirate's Dilemma is playable from 3 to 6 players, takes about 45 to 90 minutes to play a game, and is for ages 10 and up. And the video will continue, you'll be hearing my voice, and I'll be talking at length about components, and then how to play, me. I'll be saying those things. I've wasted more time than I should explaining how I'm going to say these things. On to the next segment. So over here on the left side, we have 3 character sheets. We have Nettie, Billy, and Frankie. They all have their respective action dials. They're just on whatever random icon they happen to be on at the time. And they all have their special character cards. So Nettie has a harpoon, Billy has a bone club, and Frankie has the trusty carrot. The differences between the characters is mostly aesthetic and initially strategic. And what I mean by that is they all function the same way. So all the information about what you would do for the different actions is all exactly the same on each character. The real difference is that these characters will all start off with their specific item. Frankie starts off with the trusty carrot. However, once that trusty carrot is played, it will go into the discard and get mixed in. So other players are going to have a chance to potentially use different characters' cards. The difference is you just begin with those individual abilities, whereas if you were not those characters, you just wouldn't have it at the beginning, if that makes sense. And I hope that it does. Everybody would also get a player guide. I love a good player guide. Keeps it real simple. How to win. You win if you save the ship and have the most treasure. You also can win if the ship goes down because of the soon to be mentioned creature, and you have the least amount of treasure. Thematically, you have less weight on you, therefore you survive. Everybody else had more cards, more weight, and you'd like to think it was their greed and hubris that's the reason why they drowned. Or at the very least, their greed. But a person can hope. All right, so I'll explain the character sheets, the dials, which correspond to the various functions here. So this corresponds to plunder, and I guess I'll turn like that, make more sense. This corresponds to patching, and this corresponds to firing cannons. All piratey kind of stuff. And this corresponds to bucket, meaning, well, this area here, also removing a bucket full of water from a ship that's sinking. Did I mention this game is called We're Sinking? Here to the left side of the board, we have the threshold sheet, which indicates how much water that ship's specific level can actually have. And this indicates how many of the water deck cards you put here, and then flipping these over, because these are double-sided, how many potential treasure cards you put here under the plunder column. These cards are going to start coming out here, and you'll see how that works in just a second. This is a discard pile for discarding. Another thing I like about the game is the designer made it really straightforward. You literally, if you're the first player, you follow this script, if you will. I mentioned the water deck. So the water deck all have this back on it, the same back that you see there. And there's a bunch of different things. Some of the cards just gonna be clear water cards. Now these water cards are just gonna go into the water column here, meaning that's how much water a particular level of the ship. I'll get into the levels in a second. It's just taking on. And you have all types of things. You have the Smithy Hammer. After revealing a patch card, instead of your normal patch action, upgrade an active cannon card in the cannon column. So there's all types of things. Treasure map. 10 points at the end of the game if you have no clear water in your hand. Interesting. And as I mentioned, the treasure. So I believe the highest treasure card goes up to 6. So you have various colors and numbers. And these are essentially like victory points. You also have breach cards. Breaches are holes in the ship that are primarily being inflicted upon the ship by the creature. So you have minor breaches, major breaches, massive breaches, and monster breaches. So as you can see, they go one patch. So if this was the breach column here, you just lay them out like this. This is not great. Wow, that's kind of a lot. That would be bad. I mean, that's 3, 6, that's 10 different. You'd have to have everyone patching. Even if you did in a 3-player game, you still wouldn't necessarily have enough to survive that. Oof. So for every breach that just continues on, you'll be adding a clear water card. Now I should have actually put this down like this here. I think I showed it the other way, but that's fine. So these are the breaches that are basically holes in the ship, and the little hammer icon is an action that you can potentially take every turn in order to resolve a breach. But for a monster breach, you have to have 4 to resolve this card. So if you can't resolve them all, then it remains. And that's bad. That's bad. And you have 12 double-sided cannon cards, which indicate how the cannons work. So if you have a single shot during the fire cannon action, you may reveal and discard up to 2 treasures to re-roll this cannon die for each card. So they are double-sided. So when they're active cannons, they're here. And then you place the corresponding dice next to it, so you have single shot, double shot, triple. The odds are really low. Like on the single shot, out of 6, you get 1. For a double, out of 6, you get 2. And I'm sure, as you guessed it, for the triple shot, out of 6, you get. So you're definitely going to want to upgrade as soon as possible. And then we have the Kraken over here, which is the easiest of the bosses. So they go up from 1 difficulty, as you can see the picture on screen, up to 4. Each boss has their own dice. So Kraken has these 2 dice. So on the flip side of this, it actually gives you what the setup would be for the Kraken. So you would add the Kraken drum to the water deck, this deck here. And after rolling the Kraken's dice, ignore angered this turn. Okay, cool. Yeah. So each of the creatures has a card that will go into the deck, 2 specific die, and then the creature will be accumulating up to 4 basic die. And the basic die indicate putting a breach in your ship, by that, adding more water into your ship, nothing at all, or damaging a cannon. So yeah, not great. And then these are the other color dice for the other enemies, but you only fight 1 enemy at a time, and taking on more than 1, that's just crazy. That just, what are you doing? Like, why are you just showing off? And this little thing here is how you indicate how much damage you've been doing to the enemy. So as you go up here, you'd be adding, I believe, another basic die to the enemy, and then you go up here. So the more damage it gets, the more damage it can do to you and your crewmates. So that is somewhat how the game is set up. I'm not sure if I showed this already. So level 1, the threshold is 7, and this indicates how many of the different cards you set out. And then should you be at 7 or higher, you would flip it over, level 2. So this will just move around as... So the ship will kind of sink in levels. And this wonderful ship here, 3D printed ship, as you can see, it's really nice looking. Very nice. And what happens is, should we get to 7 or exceed it, you would remove the bottom section of the ship. And then each section of the ship is going to have 2 chest tokens in it. There's 10 total. You shuffle them up, and then you put 6 in. Each layer has 2, and you bring these out. And these will sort of give you certain upgrades. Sometimes they're upgrades, sometimes they're not. This one happens to be a cannon upgrade, and this would add an additional single shot cannon. When you take an action to fire the cannon, you fire all available. You'll be firing all available cannons that are there. And these are permanent breach tokens. So what these mean are, once these start coming out, these will go at the top, and these cannot be patched. So these will just be. In your first make checklist, the first step is to check breaches. And the number of breaches indicates how many more water cards that you set out. So it can get kind of nuts. Nettie starts off with the harpoon. It says after you resolve a water action, reveal a card in the water column. If it's a treasure, add it to your hand. We have Billy's card here, which is the Bone Club. After all plunder actions are resolved, steal 1 random card from a player who played a plunder action this turn. And we have Frankie over here, who has the trusty carrot. After you resolve a patch action, discard a minor breach from the breach column. That's pretty cool, actually. And everybody has 3 clear water cards. Clear water cards sort of take up space in your hand, but they also are good for discarding. So for certain actions, you need to discard, and clear water certainly will come in handy, much more than discarding treasure, because who would do that? Nettie is going to be our first mate, and Nettie is going to be following this checklist right here, which might appear over here. I make no promises. But right now, you start the game off with 1 minor breach. In addition, you have a busted single shot cannon, a busted double shot cannon, 2 treasures. This happens to be an amethyst worth 2, and a clingy octopus. It says if this card is removed from your hand, you must reveal it, then pick up a random card from your hand. And if it's a treasure, remove it too. Ooh, yeah, it's treasure, but you know. And then the game automatically starts off with 1 bucket load of water filling up the very bottom section of the ship. This section here that you can't see. But it's here, I promise you. Well, I'll lift it up so you can see it. There you go, see. I think that section right there, which has 2 chest tokens in it. These cards here are locked treasure, just 5 treasure cards. And how you use those is if you end up getting one of the treasure tokens, this one says 2 times treasure. This would allow you, if you open it up, it would allow you to take 2 cards from this deck. So that's how you use them. There aren't cards that I'm aware of that actually interface with these cards. It's having the treasure token. Step number 1, check for breaches. So we have 1 breach, which means we're going to put out an additional water. So now there's 2 bucket loads of water in the very bottom section of the ship. Everybody's very excited about that. And by excited, I mean terrified. Check water threshold. At the beginning, for level 1, for a 3 and 4 player game, the threshold to not remove that section of the ship is 7. We are currently at 2, so we're good. I will show you what happens once you are above, but we'll get to that in just a moment. So we're going to deal out the water and treasure cards. So let's follow down here, deal out 2 water cards. So now we're at 4. It's getting dangerous. And deal out 2 treasure cards. Now, if I happen to pick a clear water card, which I don't think I don't, and clear water cards look just like this. Let's say just for an example, I pick this one for treasure. Oh, it's clear water. It will come right over to the water column, but it will remain face up. So when you get to the actions, you'll see in a moment, it will make sense why it stays face up. Speaking of clear water, the water flask. Each clear water in your hand is worth 1 point. They're not really a treasure, but if you have the water flask, that makes them treasure. Interesting. Each clear water in your hand is worth 1 coin or 1 point and does not count towards your in-game hand size. Wow. That's enviable. All right, so that's 1. I'm supposed to be drawing out 2. And we have 2. And the second that I have drawn is an old mop. After you resolve a water action, discard up to 3 cards from the water column. That is very, very useful. After the cards have been dealt, we go on to step 4, which is to roll and resolve enemy dice. So take these. Okay, so I'm going to roll for the Kraken here. See what comes up. Wow, that's pretty good actually. So we got 3 blanks. That's good. 1 breach. That's not bad. So the enemy's always going to be inflicting damage to the ship before you really get a chance to take your own action. So we'll be adding 1 more breach. And this is a major breach. So that's not good, which means it's going to require 2 patch actions in order to resolve. All right, this is the point where I make the obligatory
Parlay? That's the one. Parlay.
reference. And now that I've made the obligatory
Parlay.
reference, I guess we can go on. At this point, all the players in turn order would make decisions. Well, everybody can make a decision, but all the players would figure out what action they wish to take between a bucket action, which means you would draw 1 card from the water column and into your hand, then you would discard 1 card to the discard pile. Or if you happen to be the only or the last player to take a bucket action, you would draw 2 cards from this column and then discard 2 cards into the discard pile. There's also the plunder action. If players choose a plunder action, if 1 player chooses plunder, that player would take all the cards in the treasure column here. They're all theirs. If multiple players choose plunder, you try to divide up the cards that are there as evenly as possible between those players. And if there are more players that choose to plunder than there are plunder cards in the treasure column, no one gets any cards. They all get discarded face up into this discard pile that I'm pointing at right now. Anybody seeing the dilemma there? Any players who choose the patch action are able to draw or discard a card from their hand. So either draw a card from the water deck or discard a card from your hand. Doing that allows you to spend a hammer. You can spend a hammer in one of 3 different ways. You can fix a breach, 1 hammer per icon. This one will require 2. You can fix a cannon. The nice thing about this is it's just 1 hammer for either one. So you could fix the double or fix the single. The third thing that your hammer can be spent on is taking and busting open a chest token. So if you could, I mentioned you can fix the cannons, fix breaches, or you can take one of the tokens, busting it open, essentially you looking at it, seeing what it is, and then you can use it whenever you see fit. Although it might help if you did something like this one, which is to get a cannon upgrade. So you could upgrade a single to a double or a double to a triple, assuming you have one that's out. And then the last action is fire. You can fire the cannons. You can fire any active cannon that's out there. So right now, when the game begins, there is a single shot cannon available. Discuss and declare action. So everybody's gonna make a decision. So let's say Nettie's gonna make a decision. Billy's going to make a decision. And Frankie is going to make a decision. At that point, you would reveal and resolve the actions. You reveal from left to right. So we're going to reveal Nettie first. She put it in the water column, but she's really going to be taking a patch action. Billy put water into the plunder column. And last but not least, we have Frankie. He's going to be firing a cannon. So Billy will go first. You go in turn order to place your action dial, but then the action dials actually are done top to bottom, left to right, once they've been revealed. Okay, so Billy's going to go first. Since he's the first and only person who did the water action, he's going to take 2 cards. Take these 2 on the bottom here. They both happen to be treasure. So he has amethyst worth 2 and topaz worth 3. So it also means he's going to need to discard 2 cards. So he's going to discard 2 clear waters from his hand and then add the cards that he recently obtained. And just to make it clear, these cards would be in your hand. You would not be showing them to the other players. Yes, you're on the same ship. Yeah, you all don't want to die, but you know, you're working together until you aren't. Okay, we'll come over here and Nettie will be up next. She's going to take a patch action. So the first part of her turn is going to be to draw or discard a card. She's going to draw a card. I'll see what she gets. Okay, she got the cracked compass, and it says after all action dials are revealed, change your action to a different action. It's also worth 1 point. It's a treasure card, it's worth 1 point, but the cracked compass would give Nettie that ability, which is pretty useful. Now that she's drawn, she had a choice of drawing or discarding, she has 1 hammer. I'm going to spend that hammer on fixing this busted double shot cannon, which means we flip it over, and now this cannon can actually be fired by a player who chooses a fire action. Okay, and then we come over to Frankie here, who has taken the fire action, and Frankie now has 2 cannons with which to shoot from. So Frankie can roll both of these dice and hope to hit this Kraken. And look at that. We got a hit. So we move up the marker there, which also means, unfortunately, that we're going to add an additional basic die to the Kraken. It's a little plus die symbol here and another one here. So the enemies can ultimately have up to 4 basic die. We're going to be adding 1, which makes them a little more lethal, but also brings them a little bit closer to death. So Frankie can also re-roll if he discards a treasure. However, Frankie has 3 clear water cards, and you probably want to keep that trusted character because it's pretty useful in terms of fixing breaches. So Frankie's not going to discard that because you can discard up to 2 treasure cards. Up to 2. You can discard 1 and then re-roll a single die. But Frankie's going to hang on to that because if he had other treasure, maybe he'd feel like, hey, I'll throw caution to the wind and bring the Kraken a little bit closer to being released from life. I'm not sure why I did that, but here we are. That was step 6, to reveal and resolve actions. And then step 7 will be to check your hand size. The minimum hand size is 2. The maximum hand size is 10. Nobody has over 10 cards, so we're good. And then you pass the first make card to the player on your left. Let's say that will be Billy. Let's say, hypothetically, the game went a little bit differently and we were at 7. So now it's still Billy's turn. Check for breaches. Ended up putting 3 more over here. So now we're at 8. 8 definitely goes higher than the threshold. So at this point, you would flip this over and you would follow these sinking procedures. You would remove the lowest section of the ship, which also means that you would take out the treasure tokens and you would place them into the breach column. They are things that can be obtained now, and this can just go to the side. We would then flip and rotate the threshold card. So now we're going to level 2, and you see 3 and 4 on the back, but now we're at level 2, which means now the water threshold is 8 cards. Well, 8 water cards, but then you put out 2 more as per the instructions and then 3 treasure. All right, but we're not there yet. So we did that. We're going to discard all the water and treasure columns, excuse me. So all of these will get discarded, and then you'd shuffle them back into the water deck, creating a new and fresher water deck. If there are any breach cards, discard all the breach cards and gain 1 permanent breach. So I take the breach cards and put them on the bottom of the breach deck. So the breaches are done. Isn't that nice? However, I would be bringing out a permanent breach, which you cannot patch away. And then we'd flip over and start off from step 3. And the cycle will continue. That is essentially how We're Singing a Pirate's Dilemma is played. I'm well aware, and the designer of this game is well aware of how people perceive semi-cooperative games. But as you can see, it's something that is not carried through the entire game. It's something that kind of comes in ebbs and flows, and it works quite well, and is a lot of fun to play. If you wish to support We're Sinking a Pirate's Dilemma, it should be up on Kickstarter right now. There should be a link in the description you can click on to do just that. Anyway, that's going to do it for me. Thank you for watching. Take care, stay safe, and be blessed.